Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Deer Gear Podcast. Listen, I apologize. I have been MIA for the last 3 weeks, and that's just flat out unacceptable. But we have had so much exciting stuff going on here at Exodus, and you guys have absolutely overwhelmed us with the support on the Exodus NIS 204 diameter hunting arrows. And Bobby and I have just been building like crazy, and I haven't had time to sit down and record and edit these podcasts. So I deeply apologize, but we're back in action, and we are back with another episode with Dorge. But after this, I am getting back to 2 weeks of gear-related talk. I want to get back to the roots of the Deer Gear podcast. I want to keep the archery stuff in there, but season is coming. Gear is hot on my mind. I have some trips planned, and I need to start learning about what the killers are using. So with that said, this episode is with Dorge. We talk all about the 166 diameter shaft, what it's good for. Dorge isn't a complete 166 hater, I've learned in this episode, and quite frankly, he may have convinced me to want to give one a shot just to see how it performs compared to the 246 and 204 diameter arrows that I'm used to. But like I said, guys, we have so much exciting stuff going on here at Exodus. Velvet Fest is about to blast off next week, the official start to deer season, and we're going to be celebrating this year in a huge way. So make sure you're signed up for the email newsletter to be notified what sales are popping off. We're going to have a 4-week event, and there's going to be a new sale every week, so you're not going to want to miss it. And guys, you haven't heard me announce this, but we have a giveaway going on with Latitude. You can win a set of the new Latitude SS Speed Series climbing sticks, the carbon climbing sticks. You can win a 3-pack of those, a dozen Exodus arrows, and a new rival. All you have to do is sign up with the link in the description below, and you're entered to win. The winner is going to be announced very soon. I apologize, I haven't had time to announce that, but act fast, get on that sign up list. It's in the link in the description, and you'll be entered to win. I believe the winner is going to be announced next week, so make sure you're doing that. And guys, with that being said, let's get into today's podcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Deer Gear Podcast. Listen, I apologize. Dorge and I have been out. We haven't had uploads, but I have been absolutely overwhelmed and swamped with building Exodus NIS orders. So thank you, everyone that has ordered. But with that said, I apologize for missing some uploads. And Dorge, I apologize to you for not being able to sit down. But, man, I've been swamped.
No, I am serious. You are swamped.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's been serious. That's for sure. But I mean, the folks love the 204 diameter shaft, and it seems like just like with anything, I mean, you are a manufacturer of a ton of different things, and people always want what you don't have, right? And
of course,
it's we're getting smaller in diameter here with the Exodus arrows. We have the 246, we have the 204, and everyone's like, where's the 166? So today we're going to talk about the 166 shaft, the shortcomings, what it's good for, and I guess how to make it work if you're in love with that shaft.
Okay, well, let's really dive into this, because I got so good customers say, I just love the look of the 166. They didn't talk about how good it shoots. They didn't talk about how much problem they got. They just simply say they like the look of the 166. Okay,
it's America.
I understand that. I mean, just like when my last conversation with Professor Selig, who is one of the best aeronautical engineer that I've ever seen, he was taught by his last professor when he gets PhD. He say, when you design something, especially airplane, it has to look good. Otherwise, it can't be sold. Whatever it works doesn't matter. It has to look good. Now the question is, what is looking good? For me, the larger the diameter, the better the arrow looks. But that's just me. Some people like it thin, but I understand in arrows, of course. Okay, now let's talk about manufacturing process of 166 and what's involved. Why do people look at 166 and even as crazy as 125? Okay. The 166 arrow have one benefit that I cannot deny, is that if you do a traditional archery, if you do quote unquote really rough hunting, I mean, just like if you are crazy enough fishing like me, you will remember the Daiwa Heartland series fishing rod. What it does is that it's a super thick wall, ultra thin diameter. It gives you, and in the case of fishing rod, you absolutely have the benefit of cutting through air a lot easier. But anybody who understands thick wall, thin diameter fishing rods, they notice that, yes, aerodynamic, it sounds correct because it goes through air a lot faster. But the response of the rod is sucks. That means when you cast, after finishing casting, the tip of the rod will wiggle up and down, up and down. Do you know why? It's not the modulator is not right. It's simply the wall is too thick. In order to bend thick wall, your memory effect, and then as a memory effect, in other words, as the memory kicked in, you apply energy. You also have to take energy out. That's the reason a thin, quote unquote, a thin shaft with a thick wall is not ideal. Well, can you use material science to offset it? Answer is absolutely yes. That's the reason you notice in the 166, I'll name a few good arrows that people really like the original VAP, like the Black Eagle X Impact, not the Deep Impact. So the Deep Impact is a heavier wall, lower modulated carbon 166 shaft. It is great if you do pigs because it's a really heavy shaft. But again, when you start shooting more than compound bow, you want the arrow speed to be reasonably higher. Otherwise, you don't get the benefit of shooting compound bow.
And the
But
modulation of carbon.
Correct, because you got like higher modulation, usually equivalent to lower grain per inch.
Yep.
Then you got a faster arrow shaft. Because higher modulation also had one benefit: it recovered faster. That's the reason if you're into fishing like the OIMX from G Loomis, it's going to be in the GL2 or the GL1 or the GL3, and then you got a GLX. X means that it's a 40 million module carbon compared to, say, a 28, 32, or even a 24. But then, what are the downside? Well, that's the reason when people say, I want to shoot X Impact, and I usually do not recommend anything 350 or below. Because the wall is so thin and then you don't have enough material. It's brittle.
Brittle, yeah.
Yep. That's the reason when you look at the VAP, then you go to 700 800 spine, it's actually heavier because the material has changed.
Yep. I was just going to say they actually use a different material for those different spines.
And then it's actually the diameter also get bigger on the OD.
Yeah.
So just like, is there a way to overcome all of the above? Answer is yes. But it's a very costly process. Can you get, I'm talking shaft only. We're not talking how to approach we're talking the shaft you manufacture. How can we possibly make a 166 thin enough to make you feel great, sexy looking shaft, best material, and then some people throw some X weave or whatever on it, but actually it doesn't do anything. Because when you look at 166, the wall thickness is really the critical part. And the modulation carbon, the direction of the carbon itself combined make a big difference on how 166 worked. Is there a way to make it ideal? Answer, you said, no, it's not. If you compare side by side, on the same cost benefit, you cannot compete with the 246. In some cases, even the 300. But if you insist that I absolutely like the look of the 166, and I want it to perform very similar to a 246, what can you do? First, you increase the modulation. So you use a much more expensive material.
So you can decrease the wall thickness. Is that the idea there?
Correct.
You can use less material.
But remember, you still need the spine back.
Yeah.
So then the modulation goes up. But then at the same time, I'm building arrow with, which using my two patterns. So I need everything I want to have before. I want to shrink it. If you think about it, the 246 of the OD is closer to 275, all the way to 166. If you look at the actual percentage of the wall thickness over it, is over doubled.
Wow.
Because the diameter literally shrink. You think of 166 to 246 not much, but you look at the circumference. Remember, this is a diameter times pi, okay, times 3. So if you shrink half, it's more than 1.5 times smaller.
Right.
Your circumference.
Yeah.
So now what can you possibly do? Now, the first thing is that I refuse to build an arrow that's not beyond safe. Can I do that in the, say, ultra hard modular carbon? Answer is yes, but it will be heavy. And then
Because
can
you're
I
going to
use
use
even
more material.
Yeah, because you have to support it.
Yeah.
But then if I need to use more material, still we want to control the spine directional control, and then using what I have for before, like the 90-degree 180 plus 45-degree 135. The only way to do it is shrink the thickness of the wall, the thickness of the carbon fiber. Well, I sort of did it. I did it with a 1K, 4K. The downside is that you're looking at 500% more expensive in material, sheets. And then you also increase 500 times the material, now 500% more material.
Oh, wow.
Think through the product. I mean, we're talking material only. Remember, when you make a shaft, then one of the most expensive is labor and process. Okay. Now, at this moment, very much like my knocks. Remember the old days when you talk about knocks, people take 25 cavity, 4 cavity, and then regrind?
Yeah.
I mean, so anytime machine cost for me is 25 times more because I'm going to go 1 cavity. And then in the case of regrind, you throw back 70% of the material. So you cost 70% more material, which is, if you think reversely, is actually 2.5 times more material in cost. Now, in the case of the 1K, 4K, is 25 times more in cost of the material alone.
Jesus.
Now you understand, because that is why the when you're dealing with the 1K, 4K or the 1.5K, 4K, I use 1.5K in 204, my 204, but I use 1K, 4K in the 166. Well, under that condition, instantly the cost go way high. But I got all my specs. Because the modulation high enough, I still have my my linear spine. I still have everything, except I just now put all the effort into material. Now you understand. I mean, theoretically, if I do not went through my channel to build stuff, you're looking at something like a Carbon Express medallion set of shafts, because technically it's the same deal, but it was a little bit better labor process to build it.
Sure.
A set of Carbon Express medallion is $650.
$650.
Yes.
For bare shaft.
Yes, bare shaft.
For 12.
Yep, when you put tungsten shaft, spin wing, knocks, you're looking at about $1,150 a dozen arrow.
And your 166 is 220 bare shaft?
Yep, bare shaft.
Wow.
Now you know why people in the NFA love my stuff. because unlike others, I mean, you need to understand, in the archery industry, in most cases, if you build a dozen arrow at $1, that dozen arrow need to sell for $120.
Yeah.
That's how much you need to, because all the middlemen.
Right.
In case of me and you, I don't have middlemen. I am the manufacturer, and you are my OEM guy. So that's the difference.
Yeah,
we can do things that other people can't touch.
Pretty beneficial to have that relationship.
Well, that's true. But then now that is reason why our 166 is actually, I personally feel like it's better than the Pro Tour, which is another $600 dozen shaft, which is aluminum.
That an Easton shaft?
Yeah. Or X10.
I'm looking that up right now. Which one did you say it was?
Pro Tour or the X10. Those are the two ones. Those are aluminum and Procom.
Procom. Yeah, these are okay. On Easton's website doesn't give a price.
Yeah, but usually you figure that when you build it with the tungsten point, you're looking at about $900 to $1,200.
Did you say $900 to $1,200?
Correct.
What is why? What's the
Because in order you use those shafts, you usually start with tungsten points. The tungsten point average is about $500 $650 a dozen on the point, and then the shaft is $500 to $600. Then you put your knocks and vein, then you're at $1,100 to $1,200.
Wow.
I mean, now you know why when I design things, I try to shift the density and so on for them. And remember, those are not compound bow shafts. Those are competition recurve shafts.
The Procom?
The Procom, the X10s, X10 is a barrel shaft too, but I actually, in case of my 166, I personally feel like that the performance is even better than that, significantly better.
It looks like I just found the Easton Pro comps on Lancaster Archery on the so this is the Easton 4mm AC Pro Comp Hunter shaft. $291 for 12.
Yeah, those are hunter, those are the competitions. There's a difference. There's a major difference.
Let me see if I can find the other ones.
The Pro Tour is what the Pro Comp is the competition hunter. They try to push them for that. Remember, how many people in say in the archery competition will pay for the shaft?
Yeah, right. No one. Oh, okay. Here they are. Easton X10 Pro Tour. These are $481 a dozen for bare shafts.
That's bare shaft. Yes. Now you see the.
People complain that the MMT or the NIS are expensive.
No, because they don't understand. I mean, like the old days when you buy a good Yamaha bow, back in the days when a Matthew is just $300. How much is a Yamaha?
Yamaha made bows?
Yes, the competition bows. Those are $700-800. When Matthew is $300-400.
Wow.
I mean, but just like if you build with a win-win bow, a recurve, that's $2-3 grand. Or you deal with something like the what do you call it, the OK bow. Those basic single cam compound start at $2,400.
Jesus.
So people just not familiar with what the cost structure is.
Sure, that makes sense.
I mean, just like fishing. I mean, or even into gardening. I mean, if you're into gardening, say you go and buy a pair of Frisker scissors for $6, and then you went to a Japanese bonsai shop and get one of the master to build a set of scissors. You're lucky to get one for under $600. I mean, it's like everything else.
Yeah.
If you know what you want and you know how good they are and you know what they would do, and there's no other way. I mean, it's like stereo. I mean, I remember the time when I was a dealer when I won stereo source in college. I was a Magna Planer and Apogee dealer. How much is a set of Apogee today? You don't touch one for under $70,000.
How many thousand?
70,000.
Holy.
That's on the low end. I mean, at the high end, when you go into some of the English speakers, that go up to 150,000, excluding installation. I mean, yes, and then you compare, and you get the speakers and throw on the table. I mean, I remember the time when I was doing stereo. I have strict wire cable. I paid $450 back in 1987 for a 20-foot speaker cable, and Whopper is $2. Do you know what you want? Do you want it bad enough? Do you understand what you're buying? That was the key.
Yep.
I mean, it's like everything else. If you understand what you want, price is really no object. If you want the extra large free steps, you really don't have a choice because you have to go through that extreme to get there.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But in the case of the 166, you can make it work, but you need to go through all these extreme to get it work. And it's not just extreme, it's an understanding of what you want it to do, understand the material, understand how it's supposed to function, and how you're going to work with it. That was one of the big deals. That's the reason when you first start with tell me that you want to do an arrow, I tell you, don't touch the 166, don't touch the 204, get the MMT, at least get your foot in the door, understand the process. I mean, let's be frank, when you start 204, how much trouble you really got?
Yeah, we struggled. I mean, we didn't, there was a lot more to it than what we thought. I'll put it that way.
Exactly. And remember, I built yours a lot simpler. I already engineered you to be the simplest, and you still face trouble.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if I let you build 166.
I want to try. I do want to try it, just like to see how bad it is.
Well, 166 can be done, but that's at the same time, everything you learned has to now move one step further. Okay. Now we talk about the shaft. Yes, we can use material science, we can use construction to make 166 behave like a 204. But remember, no matter what, 166 still have the same identical, it's not the same process. Now, in the case of most other company, the 166 is what you call a centerless grind process when you finish. What does that mean? That means unlike other shafts, you don't have a center point to it. You grind it. Grind it to exactly the way you want it with the OD. So what does that mean? That means the wall thickness of the arrow shaft from arrow to arrow is not the same. That means if you look at the wall thickness, I mean, OD is identical, but one side of the wall can be, say, 10 or 5 micron half larger than the other. Well, when you understand it's a centerless grind, anything less than a 204, you need to use a centerless grind process. Did I use a centerless grind process? No. My mandrels can do wonders. And I don't use metal mandrels. Let's just put it this way.
So that guarantees that you have concentricity around the wall.
Correct. That's the reason I got and at the same time, the finish is so refined. You can see that if anything is not done right, the weave will be broken. Because the weave is only 1/5 the thickness of the normal 4K weave.
When you have, man, I'm just thinking about this out loud, but when you have wall thickness that's not consistent throughout the shaft, and you're talking about trying to get the inserts to fit concentric.
Inside.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Now you see why I do not ever, ever, ever make insert for those things. Because the moment you put it in, you concentric the insert. What does that mean? It's still off.
It's off because of the wall.
Correct. You got it.
Yeah. And that's going to be, I mean, I've seen this happen now. Like I've seen the run out that happens from not having your inserts in there perfect. And I can just imagine the trouble that would give you.
Now, think about it. For 90%, I'm going to move out some shaft now. Shaft is finished. I'm going to move because the last point I point out is the uneven wall thickness of the shaft when you grind it. Yep. Because it's a centerless grind. If you don't control the center when you grind it, how do you guarantee when you're grinding on every single side is the same? But in case of the case of my 166 with a 1K, 4K, if you slightly grind a tiny bit different, do you think you can see it?
No.
You're going to damage the fiber.
Yeah.
You're going to see every single damage on it.
Yeah.
Now you know why my 166 looks so good. Because there's so much freaking effort put into it.
They do look good.
Now, remember, now we're going to the front part, which is called the insert, okay? Now, you already learned the node. You know what the node is. You already learned how the node behave, right? So if you do the 166, how much of the broadhead can be inside the shaft? If you shoot, say, a center AMO 832.
How much can be inside of it? Not very much. As a nothing. None, yeah, none.
Yeah, because in order to make it work, you need to put a piece of metal inside the shaft. After the metal, you need space. Then you need the space for the thread. Then you need the space for the neck before you got a few points.
Yeah.
So assuming that you do the normal thing, you put, say, 1 inch of the material inside your shaft. You got the entire broadhead sitting on top of that 1 inch, isn't it?
Yep.
So now say the broadhead itself is 2 inch long and the neck is 1 inch. Now you got a 4-inch piece.
4-inch broadhead.
And where is your node? Your node is not 1 inch behind the carbon.
No.
It's 1 inch behind the inside of the insert.
Yeah.
Now, when your arrow flexes, the front part of the flex is 5 inches, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then how the hell did you point it right with the blades on it?
Yeah, you can't.
Well, isn't physics beautiful?
Yeah.
And now you know why you have such hard time shooting the 166. Now,
especially with
remember, that's with blade. Now, if you got field points, let's go back to the time when Chad was doing this. If his field point is not aligned perfectly with the spine, the moment you shoot it, you got directionally 5 inch of movement mass in the front.
Yeah.
How the hell are you going to shoot that right?
It's hard.
Yes, it's very hard, isn't it?
Especially
it's close to impossible.
Especially when you need to shoot 80 pounds.
Yes, and how heavy a spine do you think you need to be with 31 inch draw? You technically need a 220 spine shaft.
Yeah.
220 spine on a 166, how thick you think the wall is going to be?
Whew.
How much you think the memory effect is going to be?
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Okay, now, so how do you overcome all this? Well, when Black Eagle come up with the deep impact, Randy and me talked. I say, well, you know what? The only way to make this work, you need to sort of shrink the node. That's the reason I come with the arrow outsert. Do you know how much the carbon shaft the arrow outsert covers? 17 millimeters. 17 millimeters is just over 5, 6, 8, 9/16 of an inch. It's just over half inch. That means the arrow is covered just over half inch. But where is the broadhead? This is where the design gets really interesting. I actually designed the broadhead with at least on the basic, on the basic AMO standard, it's about 10 millimeter for the neck and 10 millimeter for the thread.
Okay.
So from the point of the field point down to all the way the thread end, supposed to be 20. Okay, now see, remember the 20 numbers. Our arrow insert is 34 millimeters. That means 17 in the front and 17 in the back.
Yep.
But when you put a 20 millimeter in it, it go all the way through the insert into the carbon shaft, didn't it?
Yep.
There's 3 millimeter of this actually inside the carbon shaft. But where is them? Assuming they're using the same 2-inch broadhead. So where's your node? You remember the 2-inch broadhead is sticking out 2 inches in front of it. Plus the outsert ends is right behind the outsert plus 1 inch.
Yep.
You just decrease the whole thing by a full inch.
Yeah, I was gonna say by 1 inch. Yeah.
1 inch. It may not sound like a lot, but nobody asked you to use a 2-inch broadhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened? And how long is your field point? Usually it's 1 inch.
Yeah.
So it won't be wise to design a broadhead that is 1 inch, just like your field point. Then all of a sudden, the 1 inch, the entire broadhead, from the broadhead to where the insert ends, is 34 millimeter, which is about 34 millimeter is 1 point, but just under 1 and 3/8. So 1 3/8 plus 1 inch is 2 3/8. 2 3/8 plus the node, which is about an inch behind, you're looking at 3 3/8. No, 1 3/8, 2 2. Yeah, 3 3/8.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a 33% reduction. Now, how do we overcome that even further? How about put a CTI 160 right behind where the thread ends? Wait a minute, say, don't you make it even heavier? Don't you take it longer to recover? Yes and no. It actually make it better. Because remember, the entire memory effect is the memory. The moment you CTI, what you do, you disrupt the memory. You disrupt the harmonics. So you actually make it work. Now you up the spine of the shaft, you disrupt the harmonics, and you make the arrow faster in recovery. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And the arrow insert tubes are what? They're like 18 grains for the 166.
Yeah, for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the FOC, I mean, you help the FOC a little, but that is not what the intent. The intent is disturb the harmonics and the memory effect of the shaft.
Yep.
In the front.
Yep.
The tail is still the tail. We haven't got that yet. But the deck is ways around the tail too. We haven't reached that point. We're going from shaft to insert. So is that even a better way to make this better? Answer is yes. That is actually a concept that came up in 2019. It is called the stem outsert, arrow stem system. In other words, imagine you got a screw with a flange in the middle. It's just a shank of thread, you got a flange in the middle.
Okay.
Now you stuck the half of it into the shaft and you stuck the half of it above the shaft. And then you make your broadhead or field point, instead of a thread in it, you make a hole in it. So you screw onto the thread. So all of a sudden, the entire package shrink in 50%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because you have to give up the AMO standard. Because AMO comes, it's 832 with the about 5 millimeter shank that is both combined 20 millimeters. You can't do that because on the 160 you just cannot. You have to rethink a whole new package system, and this is what I did. I mean, as a matter of fact, the system was so well, I licensed that to Swagger, which is the new Levi Morgan whatever system they got. That's based on my patents. because they also discover in order to make that work, the ordinary insert, outsert, half out system, none of them worked.
Yeah, they don't.
Now, some people say, well, you know, with the full out system, like typical one that you see in VAP, you even see some of them in, you also see them in gold tip. What's the weakest link on that piece? If you do not use the collar, it's the connection of the insert on the stem to the shaft.
Yep.
That's your weakest link. But then at the same time, the longer the broadhead you put on it, the worse it gets, isn't it?
Because it's like a lever.
Yes, the leverage is significant. Because see, the longer the leverage, the longer the broadhead, the more it is. Remember, you're not bending the outsert. You're bending the connecting shaft of the 166 on the bottom of outsert, using that as a leverage. And your fulcrum is not that point. Your fulcrum is the edge of that outsert touching the shaft. That's your fulcrum. And then you're bending on that fulcrum and you crack it. That's very easy to do.
Oh, it happens all the time with that shaft. Like this smaller diameter shaft, the more insert outsert option or problems you have.
Yes, and then of course the gentleman who designed it in titanium called me. He said, "Oh, I got an idea to fix this. I will just use titanium and be done with it." I told him, I done it 2 years before you did. It's not going to work. It's simply a matter of force. When you do a tube of that size, it's not going to function. But if you do a tube of like an outsert, the diameter of the tube just jumped from 166 all the way to the size of the tube, which in most cases, when you're looking at the 166, you're looking at 622, 6.22 millimeters. And in inches, it will be, sorry, I'm thinking metric. About 244,000. So you just jump from a basic 166 to a 244.
Yeah, to a 244.
Yes. Have you seen a 244 insert bend? Never.
Nope.
So you just simply tell yourself, and on top of that, I'm using 7075 T5, no, actually T6 on my outserts. Now let me explain to you why there was such a process. I'll share with you, but since pattern, I don't really care. I make it out of 7075 T5. Okay. Then I forge it. It's a warm forge process. What does forging do? Forging softens the metal and ka-chunk, you stamp it into a shape. When you force it into a shape, what does we do? You realign the molecular structure of the metal. You are realigned it. That's why even forgings are so much better than casting, because casting means the material flow, the directional of the molecules are flowing whatever they want. I mean, just like when you, I didn't want to go to crystallization of material, but let's jump into it a bit. The problem with most material is the crystallization of each crystal. Remember, metal is made of crystal. Between crystal and crystal is how you got the whole formation of the metal. When you liquidize the metal and then you slowly bring it up, that means the slower you can bring it up, the better off you are, because the larger the crystal, the less gap you got.
Okay.
But when you forge it, you minimize the gap. That's the reason the moment you forge a 66 or 7071 T5 and you forge it at a warm forge or a hard forge process, you actually move it to a T6.
Okay.
The T means temper to level 6. All of a sudden, the T6 strength is 82 to 85% of the 303 stainless.
Wow.
In strength. Compared to a 6061, which is not even 30.
Wow.
See the difference? So how when you know material and you understand what it would do, it do magic.
Is anyone else doing that?
No, I own the patents to it. But not just that. And on top of that, you notice in just like the old day, you have to went through all this bullshit and know the failure to come up with better idea. Remember, if you're old enough to remember the day that Beeman come up with the arrow shaft, 100% outsert. But what's the problem with it? They are soft. They use 6061. And you can never get them on right. And if you shoot an animal into any animal with the outsert, the first thing you do is grab a knife, follow the arrow cut. Otherwise, the arrow never come out. It doesn't happen with mine. Do you know why? Blood channels. Just like, when you cut your knife into a sticky meat, it stick to the knife, stick to the meat, right? Or in the case of potato, it absolutely stuck. So how do you do it? You put channels on both sides so the air can come in. There's no vacuum effect.
On the outsert.
Correct. And now you see why those are called blood channels, because when you pull it, just like, if you grab hold of a really tight rope, you can grab hold tight, right? So what about put some razor blade on it? You're never going to be able to grab it tight because it cannot be grabbed tight. So what do you call sharp channels? Blood channels. So now you know why when I remove the outserts from animals, it's so much easier. It's the same thing with some of the, I do not recommend shooting outsert into, broadhead targets because they are
ballistic gel or
ballistic gel is totally fine because there's room. But the moment you hit a broadhead target like those other cloth basis systems, the cloth will wrap around the thing so tight you have to physically cut the target to get them out.
Yeah.
But with the outsert, with my outsert, with the blood channel, at least you got a chance. You got a way to get it out, because when you have channels, those edges prevent the pressure buildup.
Right.
In other words, you don't have wedging anymore. That was the beauty of the outsert system.
You on the patent on that too?
Of course. Well, if you think through the process like I did, you understand I did not leave any stone unturned.
No.
And I apply everything I know in physics in it. Because you think through it. I mean, the basic, how do you build pressure? You need to hold a position and maintain the position so you can build a pressure. So what happened? I do not let you maintain position. I do not let you hold pressure. It can be tightened. As simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, it does make a lot of sense.
Correct. Now, with the outsert the best approach for 166, in my personal opinion, based on today's market, because many people want to shoot my arrow stem. Because arrow stem, that means you only have to shoot my broadhead, my field point only. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that, most archery customers have a very opinionated. They want their broadhead and they should have their broadhead.
Yeah.
Telling them to change everything is close to impossible. Right. I know that.
Yeah.
So I would say if you like the 166, the outsert with the CTI is your absolute best bet. Is that a better approach? Answer is absolutely. My 166 with the arrow stem, then you can use my broadheads, which is my entire swing blade plus the dagger, which is not a bad choice if you like that kind of approach. But then if you're your favorite, you want to shoot your thorn, you want to shoot your your rage, that's okay. But just remember one thing, you need to do a lot more on the vein side, which I'm going to go into next. So if you shoot a 166, how do you control it? Now let's go back to the original idea. 166 have a heavy memory effect, right? So what is the first thing to lower the memory effect mechanically? To shoot as low an FOC as you can possibly do.
To reduce
correct.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have to deal with the flex of the shaft because there's less to overcome, automatically the shaft do not flex.
Yep.
But then most people don't know how to tune bow, seriously. And I know it sounds bad, but most people don't even know how to shoot. Their form sucked. They don't hold their bow right. Their release A is not in the right position. I mean, that whole thing, is all there. And they want to shoot 85-90% off with a 166.
At 100 yards.
Just like 100 yards. I mean, remember the movie like Taken? Good luck. I mean, that's where the problem is. So how did most people overcome it? They put enough weight to the arrow is slow enough. Sure, so the effect of it is minimal.
Yep. That's the answer to a lot of that.
Yeah, at the same time, people say, oh, I need to, just like if you only got a say a drag racing road of 200 meters, and you are dragging through that thing, say 3.2 seconds, down at 100, and you only got so much brakes, what do you have to do? You have to deploy a parachute. Otherwise, you're going to be in pieces.
Yeah.
So you know that the tail of the arrow is going to flex like a maniac. You already put enough weight in the front, so you're gonna flex more like a maniac. So what's the next thing you can possibly do to make it better?
Add weight in the back.
Add weight in the back or add drag in the back.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the easiest way to add drag?
4 vanes.
Isn't that exactly what everybody is doing? Because if you don't know how to shoot, just like if you don't know how to drive, you have too much power and you don't have enough control, you add 4 vanes. You add drag.
Yep.
What's wrong? I mean, next thing people actually find out better is that you add a lighter knock to it. You also shoot better.
Aero
Why?
concept 2.0.
Well, they are not ready for it. But adding a lighter knock is easy enough.
Yeah, yep.
But then I mean, ISO 166 since 2012. Okay. The number one problem with 166 is that in order to use Firenock lighter knock correctly, you need to install the Firenock end cap first before you put the front in. If you do not use my outsert system or my aero stem system, because nearly every one of them is solid.
Yep. Can't get it.
You can't get glue to cure, right? You have to use something like JB Well. Even with JB Well, you still have a problem to deal with. You have to deal with the vacuum, the air pressure effect,
yep.
which is none of them is a good thing.
No,
but say if you did all of the above, you're able to learn how to shoot an aero outsert with an aero concept with 85 grain field point with the vane and shooting my 75 grain Falcon. Can the arrow do wonders? Answer is absolutely. I mean, if you look at the national top 7 and 12 and the NAAA, they all shoot my aero stem system. They actually worked very well, even for low poundage and speed.
I was gonna say the one example I can think of is that girl that you told me about that you set up with a 166.
Right, and then she used to shoot 800, 700 spine, and she's shooting 400 spine right now,
which is great.
Which actually the reliability and everything is unbelievable. She have never shoot that before.
Yeah,
I heard that win champion and sent me pictures in Michigan. I was pretty impressed.
You mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like talking about, we're getting there, but like what's a 166 good for? What situations are it good for? And you said unless you're doing really rough hunting. What do you mean by that?
Because at the end of the day, the wall thickness have one and only one benefit. It's not easy to break. Durability. That's part the 166 trumped everything. It's a super durability.
But what I found is the shaft itself might be durable, but most of the times the components are not.
Exactly, because you're dealing with a small knock, so easy to break. You're doing it with a half out or full out. That stick way behind, which caused the insert to bend.
Yep.
So if you say you're going for expedition hunting, you only have 1 dozen arrow, and you say you use something like the full out, you don't have you just lost the reason that you use the 166.
Yeah, because that's gonna bend.
Correct. Then the arrow is no good because you can't redo an out in the insert in the middle of nowhere and be perfect.
Right.
And not to mention is the arrow flexing so much. If you shoot an animal that's close, the broadhead is cutting it at an angle, your penetration would actually suffer.
Yep.
Even you use super heavy FOC. It's just like imagine you and say like the last guy I saw, they got a 75 from 125 ring insert with 175 ring broadhead on the 166. When the arrow touched the target, say within 10 yards, what's the tail of the arrow doing the moment you hit? The arrow is going to flex left, right, up, down. What does that effect do? What is the resulting factor? You pull backwards.
Yeah. Opposite of where you want it to go.
Exactly. I mean, I don't invent physics. I mean, a lot of guys didn't take it. But for most of the guys who do pile driving to make posts in the ground, that's exactly what you see every day. Yep. And I don't invent it. You have to find a pile driver, cover the entire shaft, and then slam. Can you just simply find a hammer behind it and try to hammer it down? Hell no. The whole shaft just wibble. Yep. Wiggle. I mean, it's like you've been doing the what are those go-go dance back in the 1960s, but it ain't gonna go down.
No.
But you
one
can see how.
there's a couple things I want to touch on. Number one, I'm going to circle back, and I just was reminded of it when we were talking about Levi Morgan. Remember that video we did on? I asked you at Great American Outdoor Show, 3 fletchings or 4 fletchings, which one's better? And you said 4 vanes are for people who don't know how to shoot. The most common rebuttal to that was Levi Morgan shoots 4 vanes. Are you telling me he doesn't know how to shoot?
He can shoot anything.
That's the thing. It's like he's not shooting that because he can't shoot anything else.
Precisely. I mean, just like, not to say, I mean, the guy is a great shooter, don't get me wrong. If today I go and put a PSE in Levi's hand, you think he would not win any competition? Instead of Matthew?
Yeah, right.
If I put it in, say Carbon Express Arrow, you think he will lose any competition?
No.
So if I put, say, a 4-wing, 5-wing, 6-wing on his bow, you think he would not win any competition? He will have a hard time, but he will still win because he know his equipment well. He don't go there getting equipment once like us. We got a few shots of over the month and then go shoot. That guy shoot every single day. He know every single piece of his equipment at the back of his head, which most hunters that who buy you and my equipment don't.
That makes sense.
But then ask yourself this question. He need that 4 wings to make whatever arrow he's making working because he need the drag.
Well,
he's
probably a 31-inch draw.
Correct. If the arrow is flexing like a maniac without control, do you need the 4 vane? Answer is yes. But then he's not shooting 305 feet per second. He's shooting 270 feet per second.
Right. He has to.
And not to mention there's no 220 spine shaft out there for him.
Yeah,
if
he's got to slow it down.
Correct. You're going to slow down. And how do you slow down an arrow? Putting weight on the back, putting light down on the back, and then putting 4 vanes.
Yep.
But if you slow it down, what does the 4 vane really do? I mean, first of all, you need to understand 4 vane is the one absolute worst position if there is a heavy wind. Look at the arrow. As you turn the arrow, there's 2 positions of the arrow that's 100% on, and the arrow will jerk based on those positions if you rotate it. Am I right?
Yeah.
And the 3 vanes at any position, the wind over that 3 is consistent.
Yep.
You don't have jerking effect. Just like in the any aerodynamic, you want the smooth flow. If you want to break the flow, you need to be consistent.
Right.
What do you get with 4 vanes? You got the most inconsistent crosswind environment.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So here's my question to wrap a lot of this up, because it seems to be like the theme with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. People they want to know, does it matter for my scenario, or what scenarios does what we are talking about apply? So for a whitetail guy, just shooting whitetails, 40 yards and in, is a 166 still an acceptable shaft?
Actually, be frank with you, any shaft in the market is acceptable shaft under 40 yards. You just need some practice, know your equipment, know how to drop is. And if you're 166 heavy FOC, you're under 20 yards. Now it's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable.
Correct.
Because of the direction of impact.
Correct. The entire arrow will not go through. That easily become an unethical shot.
But if you're using a recurve,
it is perfect.
The opposite.
Remember, the opposite is true. So the higher the let off, the worse case it gets. Remember, what's the let off the recurve? 0. So if you like the 166, stick with the lowest possible let off you can have. Use the lowest point weight you can have. Go with the 3 vanes. You will be good.
Balance.
Yep, you balance the whole thing. In other words, you optimize what they can do. Is 166 good for something else? Answer that. If I'm going a Olympic competitor, I am now able to tune my bow. My 166 arrow stem points is the only fuel point you can change to tune the boat. And yes, I truly believe that the CTI is about as good as it can get if you shoot the 166, especially if you love the traditional point and you want to use something like a ginormous 3-inch broadhead on a high level of compound boat. The CTI will save your day, especially for customers who are already devoted, invest so much. You can actually install the CTI after you build it together. You just need a tab to clean the glue. You can install it. But that will make and break your arrow shaft so much. Actually, I got a customer from who was going for Africa. He only shoot the 166, and he say, I have 100-yard penetration that I have never seen before.
Wow.
And he's shooting PSE Mark III, 73 pound, I believe, on 30-inch straw. And then he used my 166, I believe, on some, I don't recall. Oh yeah, he using my outsert with the 166.
Wow.
It even work, believe it or not, even work on Iron Will's broadhead because his speed is not up there.
Yeah, it was I think we talked to a customer here that said he was using the Iron Will with your 166.
Really, you did?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember his name, but I also there was a guy that was trying to basically replicate the Snyder core system or the Iron Will insert system with the CTIs.
Well, actually, you know, the most important part of the CTI is that people need to understand the CTI is not to stiffen the shaft. It's minimize the harmonics. In other words, the sine wave the arrow is going to make is going to be minimum. I mean, just like, I mean, if you're the car guy, I'm going to give you this idea so you understand what's going on. You want the best spring and dampening system so that the car will go back and touch the wheel will touch the ground and the car will be stable. That's what you want. The CTI with the glue is not the CTI, it's the glue. Because see, people have put shaft and stuff like inside the arrow before, but these two will move separately. So you got layer separation with total different. You end up with 2 pieces of carbon rubbing on each other and then put coating. Answer said, yes, it worked. But the only thing is from arrow to arrow, you have no consistency. Means every arrow going to shoot differently. Can you live with that? I mean, if you can live with that, might as well shoot Nitro Stinger. It gives you a similar effect in some way because it's a barrel shaft.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Well, that's all concluded what we want to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, kind of a little bit convinced me to want to try a 166 just to see what
well, you know, you can. Now, just remember, when you do 166, you need to know there's a few things in it that you will not achieve. But the benefit of the 166 is that you got super durability. In other words, it's like me building the 166. Do I want to build it? No, I really don't want it, but I want to push the limit just for the heck of it.
Right.
Because if I had not done it, I can't comment it because I don't know shit. I have to do it.
Yep.
Now I have done it. I know what is good, what is bad. I'm sharing that with you. And nobody need to believe me. They can try the same thing because, I mean, just like Chad, 2 years ago, what should I say more? I mean, I still remember what's his name? Your other boss, the company of Illinois. Jake sent me a friend with the 166. He said, I just need this boat to shoot. I can't make it work. Well, I make it work for him, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Because I just take that 300 ring off and put the arrow outside on it. I say this is the easiest way to do. If you want more, when the season finish, let's put the CTI in it and let's get you to shoot a better broadhead and field point combination. Because see, another thing about 166 is that it's even more critical for the concentricity of the field point of the 166 for most people. You stick it out way far.
Yeah.
Makes sense. You saw at any angle you have any misalignment on the 166, especially with a typical full out, you're exaggerating the situation, not just 5-fold, 10-fold.
Oh yeah, bad time.
I mean, you know, you see in the case of 204, you guys see a little bit of misalignment. What does it do? Now imagine 166 is even longer. So all the mistakes become even more obvious.
Yeah, it's more
It's not.
dramatic.
It's more, in other words, yeah, a lot of guys. Oh, I'm going to build a 166 by myself. I say, don't. I mean that's the reason Eastern come up with a good approach. Don't get me wrong with the deep six. It's a 440 thread they put inside. I mean, but then you're dealing a whole new system. But then again, you're dealing with what the HIT does. Every time you shoot, you crumble the carbon shaft.
Yep.
So I personally believe that if you want the 166 in today's world, the best is my arrow output with the CTI. If you want the ultimate system, my arrow stem is. But you have to give up on the choice of broadheads, which most people are not willing to.
That makes sense. Well, all right, Dorge. I have to get back to building some arrows. So I appreciate your time today. And guys, as always, if you have any questions for us, for Dorge, if you're looking to try the 166 out, get a hold of him. And like he always says, there's a 30-day, right? Unconditional.
Correct. Or better still, talk to one of my certified and trained dealer. Let them build it for you.
Yeah.
You'll be, I mean, if that's what you want, yes, you're gonna pay money for it. But at least you know technology-wise, it is the best if you want to, if you have all this. Just like if you really want to go to hunt, do you really want a bad guide who don't know the place? You're
No.
just wasting your time.
Exactly.
All right, my friend. As usual, is always great time with you.
Yes, sir. Well, until next week, we will talk to you soon.
All right, have a good one.